Happy Sunday. Thank you for being here today. Whether you're in person in the great room or joining us on Zoom, I'm not sure where the cameras are, but hi guys. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northern Nevada, where our mission is to grow together in love, faith, justice, and joy. My name is Carrie DeBarger. My pronouns are she, her, and I am super excited to be your worship associate for today's service, where we will be celebrating the 4th of July. At UUFNN, we welcome all to be part of our community, regardless of your racial identity, age, economic circumstances, immigration status, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Because it has always been at the core of our UU principles to accept people and be kind to those around you. Masks are not required in the building, but please be respectful to those around you and honor their choices in that department, whether they choose to mask or social distance, or both, or neither. If this is your first time here at UUFNN, please feel free to contact our office or visit our website for more information, as well as filling out the newcomer form online. Once again, welcome to all, and thank you for joining us today. Let's begin the service with the greeting of the peace by standing if you're willing and able and greeting one another for a few minutes. Say hello to those around you.
Good morning. My name is Nathan Bakken, and I am the Director of Faith Exploration here at UUFNN. I use they, them pronouns, and it's been a minute since I've seen all of you. I just returned this past week from the UUA General Assembly in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and to start our call to worship, I want to start by giving a visual description of myself, which is a practice that they utilized at UU at GA to help people who are visually impaired, whether in this room, online at Zoom, or folks who are going to watch this later. So I'm going to give a visual description of myself. I'm a tall, large-bodied, 30-something, pale-skinned, white non-binary person with dark brown hair that has some faded bleached ends. And I am wearing a black t-shirt with a light blue button-up and dark-rimmed glasses. Oh, thank you. To call us to worship today, we are joining to reflect on Independence Day. And I felt called to ground us not necessarily in independence, but rather interdependence, and ground us in connection. So I open us with these words from Adrienne Marie Brown. Everything is connected. The soil needs rain, organic matter, air, worms, and life in order to do what it needs to do to give and receive life. Each element is an essential component. Organizing takes humility and selflessness and patience and rhythm, while our ultimate goal of liberation will take many expert components. Some of us build and fight for land, healthy bodies, healthy relationships, clean air, safe water, homes, safety, dignity, and humanizing education. Others of us fight for food and political prisoners and abolition and environmental justice. Our work is intersectional and multifaceted. Nature teaches us that our work has to be nuanced and steadfast, and more than anything, that we need each other at our highest glory in order to get free. It is in the spirit of how we need each other which led to the fight for American independence, and it's the resistance from those oppressed by the American fight for independence that we learn from today. So I invite Carrie to do our chalice lighting, and Bob, alto, as our chalice lighter.
We're going to light this chalice up here, and for those of you on Zoom, you're welcome to light your own chalice with these words from the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg that I think echo the values of our congregation. America is a country that welcomes people to its shores, all kinds of people. Today, I'd like you to view our chalice as a symbol of the light we extend to others in times of darkness.
Please rise as you are willing and able and join us in singing number 305. Oh, the colors, yes, the colors we see in the springtime with all of its flowers. Oh, the colors, when the sunlight shines out through a rift in the cloud and it showers. Oh, as a rainbow appears when a storm cloud is touched by the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around, for everyone under the sun. All the colors, yes, the colors of people parading on by with their banners. All the colors, yes, the colors of pennants and streamers and plumes and bandanas. All the colors, yes, the colors of people now taking their place in the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors, yes, the black and the white and the red and the brown and the yellow. All the colors of people who smile and shake hands and say hello. All the colors, yes, the colors of people who know that their freedom is won. All the colors abound for the whole world around and in everyone under the sun. They
So as a current college student, something I spend much of my time doing is learning, whether that's in school or about the world or even about myself. Actually, a lot about myself. And in both high school and this past year at UNR in college, I've taken a lot, and I mean a lot, of history classes, including a very involved U.S. founding and framing of the Constitution course, which was during my senior year of high school. It's called We the People. For those of you who don't know, We the People is a mock congressional hearing. So my classmates and I learned everything we possibly could about the US Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and our founding fathers. And then we sat before a panel of judges, real judges, relying only on our memories, and they grilled us hard. It was really fun, one of the best experiences I've had, and also really, really hard. America has a lot of history, which is funny considering it's a pretty new country, and there's really just no limit to what you can learn about it. I truly wish that everyone got to experience We the People and to get to know the US government and its foundations with such depth like I did. With that being said, I wanted to frame my reflection for today's service as a brief history lesson on the 4th of July, especially the Declaration of Independence. One thing I absolutely hate is to sit in a lecture hall for hours motionless and listen, because I prefer more interactive lessons. So, not to fear, to begin my reflection, I thought we'd start with a little interactive audience activity. Is everybody up for a little quiz? So let's put our thinking caps on. Let's see how much the UU congregation knows about the 4th of July. So let's start pretty easy. Basic 4th of July trivia. Hopefully an easy one. Discuss with your neighbor, little chat, if you know the year of the very first 4th of July. So that's the year the Declaration of Independence was adopted by the Continental Congress. Whisper it to your neighbor. I hear a lot of whispering, and that's good. If you said 1776, you're right. So just to give you a little bit of a brief picture of what America looked like in the year 1776, there were about 2.5 million people living in the newly independent nation, which means now the US is about 130 times bigger as far as population. In 1776, a dozen eggs was 10 cents. Wish our eggs were 10 cents. Also, since the UUFNN was founded in 1958, that would mean that in 1776, our congregation was negative 182 years old. Just a little perspective for you on 1776. All right, let's do another quiz question. Tell the person next to you who wrote the Declaration of Independence. Pretty famous guy. If you said Thomas Jefferson, you'd be almost 100% correct. So Thomas Jefferson wrote the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, but then a lot of other guys, such as John Adams, Ben Franklin, Roger Sherman, they all edited it before the Congress actually ratified it. And Jefferson didn't accept credit for writing the Declaration until right before he died. He had always credited philosophers like John Locke and Baron de Montesquieu, because those are the people who helped found civil liberties that then inspired the Declaration. Also, little fun fact, Jefferson died exactly 50 years after the ratification of the Declaration on July 4th, 1826. And the most interesting part about Jefferson, at least in this context, was that in theology, he was a Unitarian. So he was not an official member of a Unitarian church, but he did attend many Unitarian services, and he has been quoted saying, "I rejoice that in this blessed country of free inquiry and belief, there's not a young man now living in the U.S. who will not die a Unitarian. So all those years ago, he was already preaching our fourth principle, which is each person searching for truth and meaning freely and responsibly. We are still working on that bit about everyone should be a Unitarian thing, but we'll see, maybe one day. All right, third and final declaration trivia question. Let's see if you can get this one. I made it a little bit harder. The Declaration of Independence is a list of grievances against King George III. How many grievances does it list? Discuss that with your neighbor. So that one is certainly a little bit harder. That's definitely the type of question I would hope to be multiple choice on one of my exams. But if you're a history whiz, you may have guessed it. If you're not, the answer is 27. Was anybody close? Yeah. So the Declaration of Independence lists 27 grievances against King George. And in modern language, they listed complaints like, probably the most famous, taxation without representation. The king acted like he was above the law. And basically, he ruined the colonists' lives in every single way. So you can relax. Quiz is over. Everyone gets an A. I'm glad to know that our congregation knows basic Declaration of Independence knowledge. Quiz out of the way. Let's get a little more background context on that declaration and the events that led up to its ratification. I'm sure you've all taken a history class, so some of this might be familiar to you. But up until the Declaration, the colonies were under British rule, and as time went on and the colonies grew, they kind of found themselves at odds with that British rule. And it's kind of like a teenager being at odds with his parents. So you all know the famous motto of the Revolution, no taxation without... The colonists feeling like their rights were being basically stripped away because they had virtual representatives, representatives who didn't actually live in their geographic area. So the colonists protesting what they felt was a lack of representation, I think is a perfect example of our fifth principle, the use of democratic process. Also, they heavily protested what they believed to be unjust taxes. The Stamp Act, Sugar Act, and Tea Act were some of the biggest indiscretions and led to the most famous protest of all. You guessed it, the Boston Tea Party, 1773. I myself have participated in several protests and marches, mostly to support climate action and gun violence prevention. None were quite as extreme as dumping 342 chests of tea into a harbor. But as you use, we probably would have fit in pretty well with protests like the Boston Tea Party. At least for me, being a part of this congregation has really been a lesson in standing up for what's right and using your voice. And that sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, was certainly at play within the minds of the protesting colonists. Sadly, as you may know, even after the colonists protested for many years and even extended an olive branch petition, things did not change as they had hoped. And so came the Declaration of Independence. Now, those grievances that I mentioned earlier, those 27, well, they're all directed right at King George. According to the Declaration, King George was a really bad guy. I've never met him, but he deprived them of trial by jury. He forced them to quarter troops. Possibly the worst of all, he answered their petitions for redress with repeated injury. The Declaration claims that the reason independence was so necessary was because their calls for peaceful change were ignored. Ultimately, the colonists felt that their rights were being stripped away. And as you use, I think we can empathize with this. I mean, it's right there in our first principle. The colonists felt they weren't being treated with the worth and dignity they deserved. Now, we can't ignore that the Declaration and the colonists had enormous faults. The Declaration has no mention of slavery, when enslaved people were also being egregiously stripped of their inherent worth and dignity. And the colonists were attempting to defend land that actually belonged to indigenous people in the first place. Also, I'd like to note that while they did often protest peacefully, The colonists rioted, and they even tortured British soldiers and loyalists among them, even prior to having a war declared. However, I do think the message of the Declaration of Independence packs a powerful punch. When injustice occurs, it is up to the people to change that injustice. I'd like to end with a brief excerpt from the Declaration's preamble. It says that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and their happiness. Using the words of the Declaration of Independence to guide them, a few million colonists took on Britain, a nation that was 8 million strong. And the words from the Declaration can be applied today, right here, in your minds, in this room. We are a small group, but we have laid a powerful foundation using our principles to effect change when injustice occurs. With more knowledge about our nation's history comes more responsibility to improve it. And remember the main goals of Jefferson in his Declaration: safety and happiness for the new nation. So now, 247 years later, let's celebrate the 4th of July knowing that the Declaration paved the way for us to create change. And it is still up to us, as UUs, to honor the legacy of the Declaration by making our nation and our world a better place. Happy 4th.
Please rise as you are willing and able, and join us as we sing number 318, We Would Be One. Tomorrow. A nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service with love and justice, strive to make us free.
Now is the time in our service where we share our bounty with the UUFNN through the offering. Our July Share the Plate recipient is going to be the Northern Nevada International Center. NNIC's main objective is to build bridges of understanding through their educational exchange program, refugee resettlement efforts, and language access resources. NNIC creates opportunities for Nevadans to get involved in global issues. The global refugee crisis is greater now than at any point since World War II. Estimates indicate that in the middle of 2022, more than 103 million people have been forcibly displaced, 37.4 million of whom are refugees. Fewer than 0.1% of all individuals are being resettled, but the NNIC has successfully resettled over 500 displaced people in Reno since August 2016, and at least one adult in each of those families is employed. For many years, UUFNN volunteers have participated in the NNIC refugee resettlement programs, which provide support and guidance for families who have relocated here seeking peace and opportunities. Our gifts can help provide household items and support for these families. So you can donate here in the Great Room using the physical baskets that are going to be passed around, or you can donate online by texting UUFNN to the number 73256. If you donate online, you can designate parts of your donation to our congregation or to the Share the Plate recipient. Again, that's the Northern Nevada International Center. If you donate in person, you can also designate your check or cash either to the operating fund here at the congregation or to the Share the Plate. And we will gather all undesignated checks and cash and donate half to the Share the Plate recipient, NNIC, and half to the operating fund here. Thank you for your generosity. Please let the offering begin. Please join me and Janet now in blessing these offerings to the work of this fellowship, which is helping more people grow in love, faith, justice, and joy. We dedicate ourselves in these our offerings.
We have two reflections today. A little bit about me. I have a Bachelor's of Arts in English Literature, and when I was thinking about our 4th of July service, I was thinking a lot about the language we use when we talk about this day. July 4th, we often use the language of independence, the language of freedom, and in fact, we often use independence and freedom interchangeably as synonyms. Yet, when beginning my research for my reflection today, I followed my curiosity and my love of words, in part because I am an educator and because I am a poet. I believe that precise language is important, that words have meanings, and that synonyms are never truly synonymous. So I'm going to open my reflection today by offering you two definitions and the etymology or the origins of independence and freedom as defined by the online etymology dictionary. Independence is the fact of not depending on others or self-support and self-government. It comes to the English language from Latin through French. Specifically, it comes from the Latin word in, meaning not or opposite, and dependre, meaning to hang down from, to depend on, or to be derived of. So in other words, independence is the state of being disconnected. It is the state of being reliant on one's own self, of saying, I don't need you. Freedom is the power of self-determination, the state of free will, emancipation from slavery, deliverance. Freedom comes to the English language from Germanic roots. In Old English, it traveled to us from the word frio, meaning not in bondage, joyful, acting of one's own will. It came to the Old English from the Proto-Germanic frias, meaning beloved, not in bondage, and ultimately came from Proto-Indo-European language and the root word pre, meaning to love. Freedom is the state of being that literally and linguistically comes from love. To be free is to be joyful, it is to be joyful. It is to not be in relationship with the world from a place of obligation, coercion, or oppression. Rather, to be free is to actively choose the world. It is to choose your community. It is to choose yourself with enthusiastic consent. To act in a world that invites others to be free. And I offer these two definitions as our starting point for two reasons. One is I do not believe they are synonyms. Independence is an act of separation for the sake of preserving individual self-sustainability. It is the act of cutting oneself off from our source. So the Declaration of Independence, that severing from England, saying, you are not us, we are not from you, is an act of independence. It is to no longer be derived from a place. Freedom, ultimately, is an act of love, a deliverance, an emancipation, not from our origin, but from oppression. The second, freedom, is what I want to believe is at the heart of the great American experiment. But a legacy of independence has created a culture of individualism, marginalization, oppression, and disconnection. And it is no surprise to me, and I'm sure to many in this community, that the origins of our country etymologically are in independence. It is not a declaration of freedom we made. It is a declaration of independence. And from that independence came an individualistic society, and nothing exemplifies that notion more than the Supreme Court hearings of last week. The conservative majority on the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action. And that is not just an act of racism perpetuating white supremacy. It is an act of independence. It is an act saying, we are cutting ourselves off from accountability, from repair, from reparations. We are cutting ourselves off and forcing people to not be able to turn to their institutions for care, for support, and for aid. And the week just kept going. And in the bizarre case of a Colorado woman fabricating a gay client to discriminate against, just so that case could be used to once again pit religious freedom against LGBTQ rights, and as a faith community and as a religious community that does not hold that as a juxtaposition, it is baffling to me it made it that far. But they did it, and they did it with ferocity, and it made its way to the Supreme Court, and the conservative majority gave a green light for businesses to discriminate. It reinforced division. It said our individual independence from one another is more important than care and love. It tells all people across the political spectrum, you do not have to connect with your neighbor. You do not have to connect with your coworker or your cousin. You do not have to connect with anyone you disagree with. And in fact, you have the right to institutionalize that disconnection, that independence from the other. Now, I don't want my words to get mixed up. This is not me telling you that the best way to change the world is to hold hands and sing Kumbaya with white supremacists and transphobes and billionaire oil tycoons. That's not what I'm asking you all to do. What I am asking is an invitation to think about why in our culture do we elevate independence under the guise of freedom? Why do we conflate these words? Why do we want them to mean the same thing? That disconnection and love could be synonyms. In 2023, independence is not the act of resisting a tyrannical empire that is overreaching taxation policies, like it was for the founding members of this country. In 2023, independence reinforces power structures. It reinforces severing acts from compassion, connection, care, and justice. And so how are we to respond as Unitarian Universalists? Our principles, as Carrie delightfully brought into the space in Carrie's reflection, I'm going to bring them back. Our principles, as I understand them, guide us towards freedom, but they can't guide us to independence. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called by our second principle to seek justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations. That is to say, we are called to be in right relationship and hold ourselves and each other accountable for when we misstep. Accountability comes from an act of care. It is not a punishment. We are called by our fourth principle to engage with a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, which is to say we are called in a loving, autonomous, accountable, and responsive way to come into understanding about ourselves and this world. A free and responsible search for truth is never solely an individual endeavor. I cannot learn truth without all of you here, because I learned from all of you and you learned from each other. To have a free search for truth, a loving search for truth, you cannot do it alone. We are called by our sixth principle to co-create the goal of a world community that centers peace, liberty, and justice. How can we center independence within a tradition, within a movement, within a religion that calls us to be co-creative people in relationship? And not just relationship with the people who think like us. To be a world community means we have to have relationships that move across difference, that move across lines, and they do not ignore or belittle the difference for comfort, but grapple in the messiness of it all. Silence does not equal peace. Comfort is not peace. And ultimately, our seventh principle centers our respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. We are beings of a world of many root systems, a multiplicity of origin stories. We are ecological beings that cultivate freedom. Independence is to be, as the etymology teaches us, is to be not of the origin, not of that place from which we are derived. Interdependence is I am in connection with, I am connected to that from which I am derived. We all have very different origin stories. We all have very different root systems, and some of us had to cut off portions of our root systems to survive. Independence is a coping mechanism in oppression. It is not something to be demonized, but it is not a savior. There is nothing in our principles that asks us to be independent beings. They're also not inviting us to be codependent or just simply dependent. They're asking us to be interdependent, connected with intention, relationality, boundaries. The language of our seventh principle really encapsulates to how we are called to be in this moment, a moment where other people's liberties and freedoms create oppression for other people. That is a devastating question to hold. How do we stay connected to each other, to our world, when everything is asking us to be independent? Our principles guide us that way. Our sources, the human experience that tells me I cannot be without all of you and you cannot be without each other. So I want to leave you with a challenge as you move through this holiday week. How is freedom inviting you to be a more interdependent person? How is love guiding you to be in connection and community with one another? Thank you.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
It is now the time of our service for meditation and prayer. I invite you to rest in the echoes of Rosie's song. Take a moment and find your breath. It can be as deep or as shallow as you need it to be in this moment. I invite you, as you breathe in, to breathe in peace. As you breathe out, I invite you to breathe out love. And we're going to take a few moments to allow ourselves to breathe. It is through this breath the spirit of freedom moves, ebbing and flowing between peace and love. As you breathe, your breath feeds the trees feed us, the cycle continues. The spirit of freedom moves in that cycle. I invite you to come back into this space blink your eyes, look around. We have the gift of beautiful windows opening the sky and the trees to our sanctuary. We have people sitting beside us and around us. We do not have to look very far to know that we are interconnected and interdependent beings. And as we bring this space to a close, I invite you to place one hand over your heart and extend one hand outward, as is our tradition. That reminds us, you see me, I see you. We are connected. What I learn from you, you learn from me. Amen and namaste, and blessed be.
When I breathe in, I breathe in. When I breathe in, I breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Just a few announcements before we close. Nancy Oakley, are you out there somewhere? Come on up.
Thank you, Nathan and Carrie, for the message. And I want to say that we're excited that we have circle suppers coming again. And this is just a perfect way to make our interconnections and our connections work as we need it in this world. We have a couple of sign-up sheets out front already. We have a couple of dates of dinners. We have Lois and Dave Bianchi will host on July 29th. Pam Gormley will host on August 15th, and we have those sign-up sheets. We have some more coming we'll put out. And go ahead and sign up. All you need to do is come to dinner, have a great evening, and enjoy yourselves and be together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. Also, I wanted to let everyone know that there is no Junto first of the month potluck tonight like there usually is, but instead you can join us next Sunday, that's July 9th, on the patio. There will be hot dogs, ballpark nachos, and root beer, and that is all sponsored by the Junto, which is UUFNN's working age adults group. And then also, our lovely membership ministry is going to have a little event right after this service in about 15 minutes in the Star King room over in the education building. It's going to be called Light Bites, and it's just a fun gathering with some light snacks, juice, coffee. New members especially welcome, but everyone is welcome to just mingle and fun way to meet others.
Because I'm back, I'm also back on my announcement game. And so I only have two today. After this service, I'm gonna be in, I never know what to call that room. I wanna say foyer, but it's not. Gathering room, thank you. I'll be in the gathering room with a clipboard. Last Sunday, we did our Pride celebration and service, inviting folks to lean into their allyship and to be a part of our community and be allies for our LGBTQ members. Reno Pride is at the end of July, and we are gonna be in the parade as well as having a tabling booth, and I am looking for volunteers who wanna either walk in the parade or be at the tabling booth. So if you are interested, all I need is your name and your email. Find me after the service. And I will forward you via email all the information around volunteering. And then finally, this is an announcement I was asked to make. JJ Lee is stepping down as our leader of our worship associates, and starting next Sunday, Xiomara Rodriguez is going to be our new leader of our worship associates. And I just want to express my deep appreciation for how hard JJ worked over this past year and how excited I am for the gifts and joy that Zio is going to bring to all of us each Sunday. So thank you.
Please rise as you are willing and able and join us as we sing America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of green, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating life, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, God will thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Please remain standing for our spoken benedictions.
From sea to shining sea, go forth and be interdependent agents of freedom. Go forth. Amen. Blessed be and namaste.